to a Dreamcastic edition of ARG Presents. I am Amigo Aaron, and alongside this week a man who, unlike the Dreamcast, isn't thinking. The Brent.
Oh, Dreamcast was my baby. It was my baby back in the day.
You've got to lay off the hard cider in the morning, Brent.
Man, I love Dreamcast. You know what though? I actually love the Saturn more, but I understand that it was not as good a system.
So, if you tuned in last week, Brent here just dropped it right out in front of you. But this week, we spun the wheel last week. We made the deal for this week, and we'll be looking at games on the Sega Dreamcast.
Yes.
Now, Brandy.
Yo.
Did you own a Dreamcast when they first came out, and what did you think of it?
I did. I did own one. I don't know if I owned it. I did not do it on launch day. The whole launch was a bit of a disaster, but I did own one within the first month, and I remember the most vivid game I remember playing on it was Seaman, to an incredible degree. The microphone technology and seeing the guy wiggle around and react to your stuff and trying to get him to do things. I had guides about all the stuff you could do because, man, trying to grow that little dude on your own was impossible.
Seaman, very unique
Absolutely.
game featuring the voice talents of Leonard Nimoy.
Yes.
It was brilliant.
And he helped bring it together. I mean, when you played, because I played it for months, because you had to get anywhere.
Yeah.
I had gotten to the point where I'd heard everything he would say a million times, but he was still entertaining because he really put a lot into that. It was very documentary feeling when he spoke. It was nice.
I was late to the Dreamcast party. I wasn't a console guy, but the games looked so good, and the console got so cheap near the end.
Yes.
That I had to pull the trigger and pick one up, and I got an incredible deal from, of all places, JCPenney. I ended up getting one. I was a member of a website that gave you super cheesy deals, and I cheesed it up and got the thing for like $48. I think it was. It was super cheap, and this is before they were blowing them out for that price. But the Dreamcast, Sega's last stand, and a system that was born in tumultuous times for the company, and despite its success, could not right the ship. Of course, Sega by this point had a lot of trouble. So let's have
They did, yeah.
Let's take a little trip down memory lane here to 9/9/99.
Yes.
The release date for the Dreamcast. So the Dreamcast is an interesting console. Also, it's like this was a real staggered release. It
was a ha-ha release as well.
No, it wasn't a ha-ha. You're thinking of the Saturn.
But it was still
it had one of the most successful releases in the history of video games ever. It was the most successful of the time. So yeah, it did pretty good. The problem that they had in Japan anyway, so they didn't have enough stock. So this came out in Japan November 27th of 98. It was released here, as we mentioned, 9/9/99, a date that's burned into your brain from the amount of time you heard it. Released in the EU October 14th of 99, and in Australia a full year after the Japanese release, November 30th of 99.
That's kind of crazy, isn't it? I mean, I thought they were pretty much on the same as the European schedule.
No, not this case. So the introductory price for this thing was actually, I think, was a pretty reasonable price for the day. It was $199 in the U.S., which is $303 US today.
It was a crazy good price.
Yeah. Now, worldwide units sold, they've got a pretty good number on this one. And you're looking at around 9.2 million.
That low?
Well,
I would have honestly. I was thinking at least 15.
It's
wow.
When you hear it, it is kind of strange to think that you would think that I thought there would be more, especially considering how easy these are to get on the market nowadays. They're not difficult to get. So again, the Dreamcast was born in a time where Sega had just been botching stuff left and right.
Yes.
After the Genesis had attained a market share in the U.S. at one point, they had been downhill since then, and you had them in trouble. And then the Saturn had sort of not done as well as they'd hoped, and it had caused them to be in financial trouble. Which is amazing if you think about it, how well they were doing. That suddenly they find themselves in trouble. So,
well, the end of Genesis to the beginning of Dreamcast was just, it was garbage. Talk about losing consumer trust.
Well, to put it in perspective, in August of '97, okay, Sony had 47% of the console market. Nintendo had 40%.
Yes, that's incredible.
That left Sega 12% of the market. That's astounding for someone that had controlled the market at one point. So they had been after about 5 years of declining profits, they needed a winner, right?
Yes.
So they were in bad shape. And so they went ahead and announced the Dreamcast, codenamed Katana. If you remember hearing about that, I remember reading about that in magazines. It was going to be a system of firsts. Among other things, it was the first system to ship. Now, I question this because it seems like we covered a Japanese system that had a modem in it. But this was the first. At least the other ones, maybe you could buy a modem for. This one shipped with a built-in modem.
Yes, I think that's the difference.
Yeah, which was interesting. It also had a GD-ROM technology. Well, what is that? It was Sega's attempt at preventing piracy, and also, and that's not all. That's not all.
It's also a bigger disc.
Well, no, it's not. It's bigger than a CD-ROM, but it's way smaller than a DVD.
Oh yeah.
But they didn't want to. They didn't want to pay for the. They didn't want to pay for to license DVD text.
Yes.
So they went through the GD-ROM. The GD-ROM, unfortunately, didn't really prevent piracy. I guess it did for a little while, but not for too long, because it was pretty easy to pirate on after a spell. Do you remember how much data those things can hold? It's a quiz.
1 gig, wasn't it?
It was correct, 1 gig. So you could put a goodly amount. And most games, to my recollection, didn't always have that much. Sometimes they would have far less. Sometimes it'd be a little, sometimes you'd be around the top though with that.
A lot of people put in a lot of filler just to make the disc full, to make it harder to copy.
Something else I always find amusing is if you look on the front of a Dreamcast, you're going to see the Microsoft Windows CE logo.
Yep.
Microsoft worked with Sega to develop a DirectX API and a dynamic link library for it. The funny thing is for developing, and the funny thing is, for the most part, it was unused. Most of the time, people didn't use the Windows thing, which I can understand that. So, how do you think they came up with the name of the Dreamcast? I thought this was interesting. This is a classic Japan. We read about this with the Wonder Swan. It was very similar.
Oh no!
They had a public competition to name the system, and they had 5,000 different entries.
They didn't go with console McConsole phase?
No, they did not. They went with Dreamcast, and it's a combination of Dream and Broadcast, and I thought it was, it's okay.
Yeah. I know. I thought it was a fine name.
The logo for the Dreamcast was this sort of spiraling little
swirly
gimmick
thing.
Yeah. And it was. I mean, it's okay. I mean, you got to have something. I guess it's good.
I mean, it's very recognizable.
Yeah.
Because it's not a perfect spiral. It looks like somebody's hand drawn it. So yeah, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah. They even had the little chime that comes up at the beginning. It was actually done by a composer, a Japanese musician.
Wow.
They paid to do it. Yeah.
All right.
It's kind of.
I like it, but.
So get this, Sega spent an estimated $50 to $80 million on hardware development, and between 150 and 200 million on software development, and 300 million on promotion. Yeah. That's a lot of million.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
That means you've got to make hot, sweet money off of 9 million console sales. You better be rocking and rolling. That's huge if you think about it. So the Dreamcast had a Power VR chipset in it. Now, they had trouble with these at first, and it caused them to, like I mentioned earlier, have trouble with the Japanese launch. Yeah. And so they sold out everything they had, and they could have sold way more. And so that was probably a bad start. They only had 4 games at launch. The games they had, I've got them written down here, were not what I would call the best of the best. Let me see here. They had here it is. Godzilla Generations, July. That's all you need to know. Pin Traceleron, which apparently that got released over here, and Virtua Fighter 3TB. Now,
Well, boy, I wonder which one of those you're relying on to sell your console.
well, right, Virtua Fighter. It turns out. So I didn't know this until I read it. I feel like I'd heard this before, but I couldn't remember it. Virtua Fighter 3 was the most successful at the time. Was the most successful arcade game Sega ever released in Japan.
Wow!
And it did great, and it sold. So they sold a ton of copies of that. But the rest of the library wasn't real popular. And I've played every one of the. Well, I've played 3 of those 4 games. I haven't played July, and I didn't like the Virtua Fighter either. I thought that I prefer Virtua Fighter 2 much. I didn't like Virtua Fighter 3.
You didn't like the game, not necessarily the port.
No, I didn't like the port. I didn't think it was very good.
Oh, all right.
You know, to be honest with you, I don't think I ever saw the game in the arcade. Did you ever play Virtua Fighter in the arcade?
I don't. Not 3.
So Sega figured that they could have sold an additional 2,000 to 3,000 units if they could have been produced on their Japanese launch. Brutal.
Which obviously would have helped. Yeah.
In the true Nintendo tradition of being late with your first-party titles, they had promised everyone that Sonic would be out right away. Sonic Adventures, it was late. So it didn't make it wasn't super late, but it was late. So they wanted to have 1 million units in Japan sold by '99. All right, by February of '99. They didn't. They had less than 900,000, so they came up short. And again, this was they knew, because to make this make sense, you have to spell out the situation. PlayStation had just beaten the tar out of everyone, but especially the Sega Saturn.
Yeah.
And the PlayStation 2 was looming. Now, it's amazing how much weight the PlayStation 2's launch carried, isn't it? I mean, everyone was like, here it comes. Here it comes. This thing's going to be the bomb. And you kept hearing about it for the whole time it was in production. And Sega knew. And they knew that this thing had to be a runaway hit to brace them for when the PlayStation 2 got released, because they knew they were going to take a dip when it got released. And so their goal was to sell as many as they could, as quickly as they could, and hope that they could hold on when the PlayStation 2. And they needed to be profitable. You know, that was the key. There was a lot of reports of disappointment with the Japanese consumers on this when they bought it.
Well, if that launch lineup.
Well, it wasn't just that. They also apparently they had some hardware issues that were sort of haunting them a couple times. It wasn't as bad as, say, the 360.
Really?
It was CD related stuff.
Oh. Okay, I understand what you're saying now. Okay.
The first big hit in Japan, and this you'll appreciate this, was released in July of '99, and it was Seaman, the unfortunately titled game where you talk to a manfish and get psychological help and get freaked out by this little freak. What a freaky game that was.
It was great. It was absolutely. I mean, for the time when virtual pets were a thing, but obviously not to this level, it was an amazing experience. And the microphone to actually be able to talk to them was stunning.
Yeah. So right before the launch out here in the U.S., Japan ended up dropping the price of the Dreamcast. And what that did was they went from making money on it to not making money. Okay, but they needed it, and what they wanted to do was gain the market share, and they did. They got 17%. They gained 17% of share in Japan. So here comes the U.S. release. This is the big one, right? They're working with Midway, which is funny. Consider what we just talked about a couple weeks ago, how Midway went out there and laid an egg. But Midway was helping them out. And when you listen to the launch titles in the U.S., okay, these were the launch titles in the U.S. You've got Expendable, Flag to Flag, House of the Dead 2. Okay, I have not played the first 2 on it. I've never heard of it, Flag to Flag or Expendable. The rest of the list: Hydra Thunder, Monaco Grand Prix, Mortal Kombat Gold, NFL 2K,
which was awesome,
NFL Blitz 2K. This is a better lineup. Obviously, there's more stuff in here. Of course, maybe it's just better to me because I'm a U.S. guy. But out of that list, House of the Dead's great. Hydra Thunder's pretty good. Monaco's okay. Mortal Kombat Gold was okay. NFL 2K was great, and Blitz was pretty good too.
It also covers a much wider spectrum.
No, there's more.
Yeah.
That's half. Here's the rest. You've got the Pin Trisalon again. Power Stone, which has a lot of fans.
Yes, it does. It's a great game.
Ready to Rumble Boxing, which I really liked a lot. I thought it was a fun game.
Yeah.
Sonic Adventures, Soul Calibur, which was a huge hit in Japan and huge here. That was your system seller. TNN Motorsports, which TNN stands for the Nashville Network.
Yeah.
You know, the Nashville Network Motorsports Hardcore Heat. Tokyo Extreme Racing, which hilariously I imported. I don't know why I did that. I can't remember. And Trick Style. Tricky.
Yeah.
Sega pre-sold $200,000 in the U.S.
Yeah.
It was a big hit, and Sega set a new sales record by selling more than 225,000 Dreamcasts in 24 hours.
Yeah.
So so they looked. I swear, I remember when this launched, people were like, "This is it. They're back." You know, there was a big deal. Unfortunately, and in 2 weeks they'd sold 500,000 units. Well, that's the problem. They sold 225 in 24 hours, and then it slagged off.
It was a huge burst and then nothing. Well, not nothing, but lower than expectations.
By Christmas, Sega had 31% of the market. Okay, which is still it's okay. One of the big detriments then was the fact that EA had decided not to support the Dreamcast. That's brutal because of all those sports.
Well, I don't think. See, everyone focuses on the sports things, and yes, at the time that was EA's big thing, was they were putting out all these sports games. I don't think that the EA ban hurt Dreamcast as much as people want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, because I think Sega, who was also doing spectacular sports games, covered it. When they lost the NFL license, that was
brutal. But that was post Dreamcast when that happened.
Yeah. Well, right.
It is a shame though, because the 2K sports, because I know a lot of you are probably American football fans, but they came out of nowhere and they really took it to EA. It was sort of funny because EA's sort of been languishing they've been riding their own wave, not really improving the games that much.
Yeah.
So. Unfortunately, this is where the trend goes downward. They just weren't selling enough units. They were selling units, they weren't matching a good pace.
Right.
Sega had only sold about 1 million units in Europe by October of 2000. You got problems. All right. You should have more than that. And we're going. This is where the story turns ugly. So. Oh, and I just thought I'd throw this in because I read this. I thought it was funny. Sega was so desperate to get over in Europe, they sponsored a bunch of football clubs. Some of these, tell me if you've heard of some of these. Arsenal FC, the AS Saint Etienne, the UC Sampdoria, and the Deportivo de la Cruda.
I know actually a small amount about how soccer
works.
Football
Ball
works.
Go in net.
No, how the leagues, because over there, everyone, my understanding, I'm sure someone will correct me on this if I'm totally off. You have tiers of leagues.
Yeah.
But if you're in a low tier and you win enough games, you can actually bump your team up into one of the higher tiers. And every I don't know if it's every season or every couple seasons, all that's looked at. So supporting these lower echelon teams.
Well, I mean, Arsenal's a pretty huge team.
Well,
aren't these all huge teams?
I don't think they're top cup, but I really don't know. Especially
you don't know what
back
you're talking
then.
about, do you?
No, I do.
You're literally making this up.
No, because John Green supports one of those local teams, and that's where I've learned about this stuff.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, well.
So
anyway, back to Dreamcast.
Let's take a brief respite here from the Dreamcast decline to talk about some of the games that got released. Now, the Dreamcast had 636 games released worldwide. Now, the funny thing is, more have came out in the past few years than you would imagine. A ton.
Yeah.
There's a lot. So, do you recall what you got when you bought yours, and do you recall what you enjoyed playing? And how long was it before you dipped your toe into the illicit world of piracy?
I could only remember vividly playing Seaman on it. So I know that I'm pretty sure I picked that up when I got my Dreamcast.
Yeah.
So that's when I would have started. I had Soul Calibur. I remember playing that a lot. I had NFL 2K. That's about it.
Wow. So you haven't played that much on the Dreamcast.
Not on the actual hard. Well, no. You said before I dipped into the world of piracy.
Oh yeah, but I mean, what have you played? What did you play that you enjoyed?
Oh, just overall.
Yeah.
All the fighting games.
Yeah.
All the 2D and 3D fighting games. They had a ton of them, and they were all great.
The Dreamcast had a plethora of outstanding fighting and racing titles.
Yes, and racing. I mean, a lot of them.
Now listen, they had that American trucker game, which I liked, but the Sega where you drive the rig and the race.
Yeah, that one was
the most
horrible.
ludicrous, destructive racing game. I always wonder what they're hauling. I hope that thing's got nothing volatile in it. I like that one. Of course, I like the game we're playing today. They had a ton of great fighters. They had the Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is their seminal title if you don't count Soul Calibur, which is.
I want to take you for a ride.
When I saw Soul Calibur, I was like, "Holy moly!" and it was astounding to me.
Yeah, we played a ton of that.
Something we should mention is that amongst other things, the Dreamcast had the ability to export video to a VGA monitor.
Yes.
And you could have some real sharp, crisp, the best you'd ever seen style graphics on it.
I didn't do it, but I mean, outside of just dabbling with it, because it took a special cable, didn't it?
I did. Yeah, I did. But I did do it a lot, and it looks great. It really looked tremendous. We mentioned that the Dreamcast had a modem. The modem worked. You could get online with it. In fact, Brent's game uses one of the peripherals that was basically sent out for the modem, which was a Dreamcast keyboard.
Yeah.
And even some of the games would let you use it.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
They also had, and speaking of those games, they had Unreal was on there. You started getting some of the first-person stuff. It's funny. Half-Life was a game that was very popular. You remember the original Half-Life. And if you nose around, because it was mostly finished, it was never released. There is a Half-Life for the Dreamcast, which I have it, and it's pretty good. It's a real interesting title. It looks good. Dreamcast also had a good run of your role-playing or adventure-style games.
Yeah, it did.
If you're into that sort of thing. So I mean, it had a goodly amount of everything. I thought it was a pretty solid system right across the board. It had puzzle games.
It did.
It had board games. There were plenty of Sonic titles on it to keep you happy. Later on, when I would go away somewhere, I would take my Dreamcast with me because you could get a program to make it play VCDs.
Yep.
Which I used to do. It also was a great emulation system. It would play a lot of emulation. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
You could just put on a disc and play it. It did a good job. Of course, you had some real big titles. I thought it had great versions of Crazy Taxi and Crazy Taxi 2, or another really good game that was on there.
I see. I don't totally agree with that, but okay.
What did you do? I thought they looked great. They played good. I think Crazy Taxi 2 is great.
Crazy Taxi without a wheel and pedals. You can't do the move.
Well, listen, you can't have it all. Something else the Dreamcast introduced, which I don't think has ever been done before or since or as well, was a little. They had a little memory card that would go into the controller, the VMUs.
Yes. And
these had displays on your controller.
Little dot matrix.
You could actually. I'll tell you the best use of it was in the football game. So they would actually have the plays come up, so your opponent couldn't see what you were picking.
Yes.
That was a great idea.
And you could take pop the VMUs out, take them with you. You could store little games on them. You could connect two of them together to transfer data.
Yeah.
The VMUs were awesome. They were awesome.
The downside of them is the batteries tended to go out pretty quick.
They ate batteries,
and
yes.
I will say I was not a big fan of the Dreamcast controller. It was kind of weird. I didn't like how it was. I mean, it wasn't N64 weird, but it wasn't like I personally prefer a controller like the PlayStation had, or I like a controller that's more conventional. I didn't like that one so much.
It's a little wide, and where the middle where the VMU fits in, it makes it a little heavy.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a very functional controller. Good trigger action on it. Buttons on it were good. It all felt good, but I agree it is a little awkward to hold. Not deal breaker by any means, though. The
Dreamcast also had an interesting item that came out towards the end of its lifespan when That was a broadband adapter.
Yes.
You could literally hook this up into your network.
Right into the network. Yep.
And I think these are pretty sought out now. I had the chance to get one a couple times. I never did. I mean, I couldn't see a reason to get one. I still really sort of can't. But you could play online games with it.
Fantasy Star Online.
That was the big game that people played it, and they loved it, didn't they?
It was a great game. Did you play that one? I've played it offline. Yes, I've played that. Not to its completion, but this type of game it was.
Yeah.
Super fun. Super fun to go out and explore. It was very MMO-ish.
Yeah. So one other peripheral that always tickled me was the Dreamcast had a couple fishing games.
Yes.
And they had a fishing rod attachment, which was great. You ever use that?
I don't know that I've ever used the fishing attachment.
Yeah, Sega had Sega Bass Tours.
Oh, yeah.
There was a couple games that used it. Now, one more thing I want to talk about before we move on is this system brought forth the light gun games. They brought them on. This was my favorite light gun system. You could have 4 people in some of the games playing light guns. I actually owned, when the Dreamcast tanked, like a Spectre, like a Leech, like a Vulture. I just send it to come and buy all their stuff cheap. I had to have it. So I went to KB Toys and just loaded up, man. I got 4 guns. I got a bunch of joysticks. I got VMUs. I got everything. I bought it all. The games, and I got them for dirt prices. I mean, they were blowing these things out of here because Sega was getting. They were done. But the light gun games were great. Of course, you got your House of the Dead. I like this game called Confidential Mission. Was great, where you're like a spy game, VR cop. Yeah, they had probably about 10 titles that were light gun titles, and they were a lot of fun.
They were.
I'm a big light gun fan, and when you've got 4 people. It's awesome. They don't all. It's great. We need more four-player light gun games. So
now the fun's over. It's time to descend.
We're not gonna dwell too much on the depth of this, but the PS2, here it comes. Okay, and even though the Dreamcast had done well at launch and did okay, Sony still had 60% of the video market. And that was with the PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
So you guess what? Here it comes. So, and the thing is, once they announced that, people had knew it was coming. But when they announced that
the price.
Yeah.
The price of the PS2. Yeah.
And of course, there were all kinds of gimmicks, and there was a bunch of lying. Oh, we're okay. We're not. We're in good shape.
We're not okay.
Yeah. So, but long story short. January 31st, 2001, Sega announced it was discontinuing the Dreamcast after March 31st and restructuring the company as a platform-agnostic third-party developer.
Yeah.
Boo!
Well, no. It was better than them going away completely, but yeah, it was a sad day.
Yeah.
And I was never a huge Sega fan, especially during the Nintendo era, when I was full Nintendo fanboy. That was a bit of a product of my youth. So I completely skipped out on the Master System and the Genesis. And then when I got older and realized that kind of stuff was stupid, I really, really enjoyed the Saturn and the Dreamcast. And now they're, gone.
It's funny to think that the specter of the PS2's launched. Keep in mind, the thing hasn't launched. Okay. Yeah. Just the specter of it being out there was enough to basically kill this thing. And you read this old stuff about what happened, and sometimes it's right, but I mean that's 100% right. Yes. Everyone was waiting for the PlayStation 2. Now get this, and I remember this. This was bizarre. So eventually they reduced the Dreamcast to $79. Yeah. All right, and they were trying to get them out of there, and then eventually they finally dropped it all the way down to $50. $50.
I'd pay $50 for one right now.
You could buy one. It held its value at that price because that's pretty much what you could get one right now for if you look around. So as I mentioned, 913 million Dreamcasts were sold around the world, and 600 titles. And it's considered a very popular machine to this day. It's a popular machine to collect for. It's a popular machine to work on. And there are plenty of new games that are coming out every year, which always amuses me when that happens. So from that huge swath of games, we were tasked with just picking a couple good ones.
Yes.
To go with, and I think we got a couple that sort of represent the system in a decent way. So what you want to go ahead and lead the charge?
I will. I started this week with the typing of the dead.
Oh man, the dead has typed us out the door there. So now the typing of the dead is going to require some explanation.
It does. Let's go all the way back to 1999 in the arcades, where over in Japan, it was a lot different than American arcades, and I'm assuming European arcades, where they take a lot more risks and they have a lot more diversity over just your joystick and button games, which gave birth to the typing of the dead, where someone decided, we're going to take a House of the Dead 2 system, the whole console, the game, everything, and we're going to slap a typing simulator on it.
Now this was an arcade game?
Arcade, yeah. This
okay.
was.
Wow, I never knew this was based on an arcade title. That's crazy.
So they did it, and people loved it. And it did really well in the Japanese arcades. So Sega said, you know what, we got something here. Let's go ahead and port this. We're going to port this a couple places. So the first place they ported it was to the Dreamcast. Well, it was kind of the Dreamcast and the Windows at the same time. But Dreamcast had an earlier release because they were a console that already had an established keyboard for where the Dreamcast would go online.
It was perfect, really. Yeah. It was a perfect. I wonder if that had any play in the keyboard and the. I mean, it's
no,
okay.
no, because the whole point of the keyboard for the Dreamcast was its online capabilities.
Right. But it's amazing that they just happen to fall into that.
Yes, it is. So now they've got this keyboard peripheral, and they said, you know what, we're going to stick this game on the Dreamcast and go from there, and it sold remarkably well. In fact, it sold so well that after the fall, they're like, "Hey, PlayStation, you want in on this?" And the PS2 was like, "Yeah." So there's actually a typing of the dead for the PlayStation 2.
So, now the PlayStation 2, you could actually hook a USB keyboard to, right? Okay.
Yeah. Which made it, just as easy.
Well, that removes the cost of having to buy a separate keyboard.
Exactly, exactly. So when I started doing research into this, I thought, this Dreamcast keyboard, how popular was it? I mean, I know it's used for its online stuff, and holy moly, I was blown away by the game compatibility. I mean, there are too many to mention. There are over 100 keyboard compatible Dreamcast games. And what I didn't realize at the time, and it makes perfect sense, is your fighting games, or not your fighting games, but your first person games, your adventure games like that, you can play with a keyboard and mouse. And you can even do some fighting games on the keyboard. A whole list of stuff. It was a much broader use device than I would have ever imagined.
Yeah, I didn't realize that many games supported the keyboard.
Yes.
And I'd forgotten all about the mouse. Even I don't have that.
Yeah, the mouse, when you put the keyboard and the mouse on your system, because it's already running Windows CE, you effectively have a little mini computer. It was a little mini computer just like the Xbox was in a lot of ways. So now, just because the keyboard is compatible with hundreds of games does not mean that you would want to use the keyboard for all of these games.
Right.
Because they even included keyboard support for like racing games, which makes no sense when you've got a system that you have analog joysticks on. But it is out there, and it was compatible, and it did work. And some people swear by it. So it is what it is. So back to the typing of the dead. It is what you call an educatement game, which means
it's not edutainment.
That's right.
It's educatement.
No, edutainment.
You said educatement. You just did.
No, I don't think that was true.
You did.
We don't need to roll that back. This is a game. This is a concept where you play a game and learn either a skill or knowledge.
Yeah.
This is the only game I know of that is an M-rated game of this type.
So this is an M-rated edutainment game.
That's right. Dame?
That's right. Don't mock me. Just keep talking.
When House of the Dead came out when Typing of the Dead came out, they pulled everything, the graphics, the gameplay, everything straight from House of the Dead 2. It's the same rail system. They added virtually nothing. The only thing they did change was your characters, instead of having guns, now wearing backpacks with little Dreamcast logos on the back, and this rig that has a keyboard in front of you.
So ludicrous.
It is, and
they don't even try to make it any semblance of reality.
No sense was put into this, and that was the appeal, and that was the charm. They did this right.
Yeah.
They said, you know what? This is silly. This is just a skin to people to practice their typing.
Right.
Let's not go serious with it. Let's just go in there and have a good time. And they did, and it was great. The phrases that you type, because when a monster comes on screen, you have to type the phrase that is attached to that monster to shoot them, basically. And some of the phrases are just completely ludicrous and will have you laughing your butt off. I mean, there are phrases, especially in the middle of the game, where there are phrases chained together to tell a little story. And I don't know if it's necessarily on purpose. I'm sure it has to be, because it all pulls from this. Each section of the game pulls words and phrases based on the difficulty. So you have little phrases where you're talking about a couple in a relationship and how they're doing. And when you're typing this, it has nothing to do with what's actually going on the screen. On the screen, you're just shooting zombies.
Yeah.
But, it's talking about how the husband is going away and the wife is upset, and then the husband comes back early and surprises her. It's just stupid stuff like that throughout the game really adds to the appeal. One thing that they do, just like the arcade game that it's based off of, because it is the arcade it's based off of, it reuses a lot of assets. You're shooting the same zombies over and over. You fight the same 4 bosses over and over. And then towards the end, you have one of 3 endings. So, spoiler alert for anyone who thinks, wow, I'm going to want to get spoiled on Typing of the Dead. This is one aspect they changed. When you defeat the bad guy, he jumps off the side of the building. And one of 3 things could happen based off of how you fought the boss fight. He can jump off the building, and when he hits the ground, he explodes in a ridiculous explosion.
Yeah.
He can jump off the building and bungee and pop right back up on the building, and then the game just ends. Or he can say
bungee. You're kidding.
No, he jumps off, bungees right back to the top. Or he can just fly off. He takes a Superman pose and just flies away. And none of these make any sense whatsoever, but it's just quirky fun.
The bungee's my favorite. Just about he's gone forever. He's like, I'm back.
And it even makes a boom noise. It's great.
I gotta watch that. That sounds awesome.
So, did you enjoy Typing of the Dead for what it was?
Oh yeah. Well, in fact, I remember this is one I acquired, but I bought the keyboard, and it was so ludicrous that I couldn't believe this existed. Like, I thought maybe I didn't know what I was looking at. I thought, this can't be real, and the thing about it is, I'll be damned if it doesn't improve your typing skills.
It does.
And, it's a pretty decent way to go about learning how to type quicker.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty good typer, especially back in the day. And I could go pretty well in this game, and I enjoyed it. It was, if you like House of the Dead, it's the same basic bear, just they put typing in. If you think about it, they could put this interface in a bunch of different games. Any gun game's perfect.
Yes.
You can even do this in like Dragon's Lair and stuff. You could probably do it, something where it's not real quick motions. You could put stuff in. It'd be, I like it. It's a good idea for learning how. I'm sure this has been ripped off by some people. Surely by now,
Well, this game has had many, many sequels, including one. The concept was actually put onto a DS game.
Not the Nintendo DS?
Yeah, not for typing, but instead for learning English over in Japan.
Huh.
So the game, like I said, had many, many sequels. It did excreting. It did exceptionally well.
Clearly, you were not a fan of freaking Talking of the Dead.
No, I didn't tell you. I didn't play that at all. When I played through this, and I didn't play through the entire game, I actually watched the ending because I heard about the Bungie stuff and I had to see it. This is a game that you can sit down and play, and it starts out very easy. I mean, it is just letters instead of words, and it gets you into the feel of the game, and you have to make decisions on what you are attacking, because things that are closer to you are going to hit you sooner than things that are farther away. So you have to prioritize what you're typing, so there is more of a game element there than I'm just typing what's on the screen. Also, there are tons of collectibles where a key press will be on the screen just for a second, and you can completely miss it, and you can pick up health power-ups, you can pick up zombie debuffs to make the words easier, points, you can save hostages just like in House of the Dead games. There's multiple avenues to go based on who you save and who you don't save. Zombies that take multiple hits will have multiple phrases, so it feels like you're actually shooting them over and over. I really had fun with this. This is not something I'm going to go back to, unfortunately. So I don't think the replayability is there, although there is the branching path and whatnot.
Yeah.
Just after a while, it got to the point where it was above my skill level. I type about 60 words a minute, and it got to the point where I couldn't keep up. And it didn't encourage me to go farther, but it didn't. I didn't hate it. I wasn't mad at it because I couldn't go any farther. I was done.
I will say, if you look at it from the edutainment perspective,
right?
I've played some of these edutainment games, and I'm one of the few people left on rocking around that went to a typing class with an actual typewriter when I was in high school. Okay, I learned to type on an actual typewriter, which is horrible. I mean, if you look at this from a game perspective, yeah, it can lose its appeal pretty quick. But if you look at this from something to actually help you get better at something, and you look at everything else, like Mavis Beacon's typing teacher, whatever,
right?
This is way more fun.
It's a lot more engaging.
So if you're gonna, and it is a shame, they really need to have like a kid version of this, so you could give it to your kid and be like, here you go, type. And this would actually probably give you a good leg up on typing. Yeah, so I endorse that. If anything, their creativity and the fact that someone thought this up,
yes,
I'll give them a grade for that. But I mean, I will say I played the gun game more, but still, this is kind of fun. It's so unique that people want to play it too.
Yeah, and the it's all hokey, cheesy violence.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's pretty violent. Well, it's not that hokey.
Yeah, it is violent because you're blowing zombies' heads off, and the zombies are humanoids.
Yeah.
But like the storyline isn't. The voice acting's really cheesy, and it's all
it's horrible.
It's all very B-level horror film, but I can see why you'd have to give it an M rating as well.
Yeah.
So how does this sell? I actually thought this would sell at a much higher rate than it does. Complete in package, you can get this for about $30.
Is that with a keyboard?
No, okay. No. Keyboard's a whole different thing. Brand new sealed, it's going for about $48. So it's not tremendously expensive. I certainly wouldn't pay even close to those prices. Just the disc you can get for about $15.
Okay.
And nowadays this is available on Steam and different Windows platforms, and
that's probably the way to play it.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can even play this out of a web browser and stuff like that.
Did you look up what the keyboard's going for these days?
I did not.
I'd be interested to know.
I would assume. Well, you know what? If you want to chat for a second, I'll look it up.
Do not look at the man behind the screen. I bought my keyboard during the blowout sale that I was talking about. And I bought it, but I'd never been online with the Dreamcast, and I actually went home and got online with it just to try it out. It was it wasn't the best, but it was workable, and it's funny, to this day, people still keep up these the Dreamcast servers.
They really do.
To play some of these games.
Yeah. Fantasy Star Online is one of the most popular, I know. It looks like Dreamcast keyboards are running about $30.
That's not bad.
And if you get in the mouse combo, it adds quite a bit more because the mouse is a lot rarer.
Yeah.
So you can have a complete Dreamcast Typing of the Dead experience for about $45, which that's a pretty good price.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So, just out of curiosity, what did you bring to the table?
So, when it comes to the Dreamcast, there's a lot of games that I like to play. Probably the game I've played the most back in the day was Tetsuo 3, which is a New Japan Pro Wrestling game that was the sequel to a PlayStation game, Tetsuo 1, which was great. I'm a big wrestling fan, and this was a great game. But when my son came into the picture and I was introducing him to the Dreamcast, he fell in love with a game that I would have been murdered if I hadn't picked for this show. That game is San Francisco Rush 2049.
Yes.
Now,
we're almost there.
San Francisco Rush, just to backtrack, the original game was an Atari game. I know you're the biggest fan on earth of the original San Francisco Rush.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to own it.
It was a game where you just hopped in some cars and ran tracks you went past Alcatraz, you went over the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge.
It was a free roam race course where you had a track and you could stay on that track and win, and that was awesome. Or you could go through all these back alleys and hidden passages, and holy cow, that was fun.
Yeah, it was a really good game. So, of course, they expounded and expanded Rush into with a newer version that had additional tracks that came out. And then they took the series in an interesting direction, I thought. The direction they went was San Francisco Rush 2049. Now, this is a futuristic version of San Francisco and futuristic cars, although there are some normal cars in there as well. And
they're not overly futuristic either.
Well, I mean they're pretty futuristic looking. It's not Wipeout futuristic, right, but if they're future cars. If you're a Key and Peele fan. So in this game, and get this, I didn't even know this. You could link 8 of these arcade machines together for a big massive
in the arcade
2049. Yeah, in the arcade version, you could put 8 of these together for a big throwdown. And in this, you pick from a series of tracks, and it's the same basic concept, but in this, you get a lot more air. And the one thing that makes San Francisco Rush, the series, unique and interesting, and it was copied. I don't really think many did it before Rush did. I can't think of any that did the secret area system. But in San Francisco Rush, the series is a tradition of having these very difficult to spot shortcuts that you could take. And the shortcuts aren't just a little cut to the shrubs. I mean, they've got those, but these are shortcuts that go into a whole different area of the board.
Yeah.
You're up in the air, you're jumping over rooftops or whatever. And it really, if you mastered where these were, you could really get a leg up on your opponents.
Yeah.
When you were playing the game. But the arcade game was really cool. In fact, up until last month, there was a San Francisco Rush 2049 arcade game in the Walmart beside where I work.
Huh.
And I've played it several times just because it's a lot of fun. It was also had that wacky gimmick with a phone pad on it that you could type in little codes and whatnot, pin numbers to save
your progress. Yeah, because it actually counts how many miles you've driven, and you can keep going back to it, and it will keep track of that, and you can unlock different cars, different modes, different stuff with your mileage that you've played the game.
Now, a lot of people don't know this, but I think it's written on the cabinet. The San Francisco Rush 2049 was running a Voodoo 3 PC video card, basically.
Yep.
This is where you've gotten to the point in the arcade scene, and we know this from first-hand experience, where you basically had a game running on a hard drive in the thing, and this had the Voodoo 3 graphics from that were the 3DFX's baby back in the day. Now, Sega and other companies had a falling out with 3DFX, and they ended up going away.
Yeah.
If you'll recall. But these, which was amazing. It was just like overnight they were gone, and they were the leader in 3D graphics cards on the PC. I remember when I bought my very first Banshee card. A Banshee card was the first round of cards that came out for PCs that were not a separate 3D card. Before Banshee cards, a 3D card was a separate card that you basically ran your video through. It wasn't its own card. A Banshee was a video card that was all in one. And mine came with San Francisco Rush, the first one. And I was a big fan, too. We both played it a lot. We don't agree on everything, but that's one thing we agreed on. And so when Rush 2049 came out, I remember when I saw it in the arcade, I was like, look at this crap. I'm not playing. What'd they do? You know, I was an idiot because it was such a shift. And it really wasn't that big a shift, but it felt like one when you looked at it. It was
wings and stuff that you could spout out for your cars. The float was really the biggest change. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I loved Rush and Rush the Rock, and then when this came out, I was very reserved in trying it. But when I did try it, I did enjoy it. And it has some really great tracks.
The arcade game, came out in '99.
Yeah.
You know. And it had 5 playable tracks, 8 different cars, and you could unlock a few more amazing. This is the arcade game. Then in 2000, Midway released an upgraded tournament edition.
Yep. That
had bug fixes and a few other things. I don't think I ever saw the tournament version. Did you ever see it?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw a tournament version of that one.
Well, the cabinet's the same. It's just the software's different.
Right. So it was time to make the leap to the Dreamcast. Now, if you've seen Soul Calibur, for example, or any of Sega's racing games, you realize the Dreamcast had a lot of horsepower.
Yeah, they could really push the polish.
That's right, under the hood. And so when this came out, it was no surprise that it looked really good. I mean, it was a real sharp-looking version. Having played the arcade game as much as I have, I thought it was I wouldn't say exact, but it was very close.
Well, the graphics were definitely muddier.
Well, it was sharp. If you look at this in VGA, it's quite beautiful.
Okay.
So I mean, I think it looks really good. Of course, traditionally when they brought a Rush game to a console, they would add a few things, and this was no exception. So the home version of San Francisco Rush 2049 includes a couple extra modes. You've got 6 racetracks. Just straight up racetracks, okay? Then you've got 4 stunt arenas. So the stunt portion of the game is basically like a separate game where you and up to 4 other players, because this had 4-player simultaneous multiplayer, which was great. It would split the screen. And you and 4 of your friends can get in here and play at once. And the stunt portion of the game, you basically you put you in, like, my favorite stunt arena is just a place that has a crap load of ramps. Yeah. There's one that's like there's an outdoors almost like in the desert or something. You can do one, but the one I like is it's indoors, just ramps everywhere, and you would run your car up these ramps, and then you would just fling your car in the air like a freaking maniac, and the thing would be spinning and barrel rolling. You've got little wings that can come out of your car to give you more lift or to kind of help you control yourself as you fly through, and you can use those to get more action. And you just flipped around like a maniac, and all you had to do to complete the stunt was to land with your wheels down. Yes. And I mean, you could flip 100 times. Yes. You could land on the top of your car, but as long as it rolled over, you're in, and you would get points. It's sort of like Tony Hawk. It's like Tony Hawk with a car.
It's not anything like Tony Hawk.
No, it is. I mean, but to land a trick in Tony Hawk, you have to land on your wheels. It's the exact same thing. Me and my kid played this mode. He likes it, but the mode that he likes the most, and that we play more than anything, and the race mode is exactly like the arcade. You got 6 tracks, Sure. Nothing really to go into there. The thing he likes is the battle arenas, and we've played these battle arenas. I've played each one of these 4 million times. There are 8 battle arenas, and in the battle arenas, your cars are. This is a car fight. What would you equate this fight to in game terms? This is sort of like a. What was that game that had with the ice cream truck on the PlayStation that you
Twisted Metal?
Twisted Metal. It's sort of like that.
Okay.
It's in this you pick one of these arenas, and there are weapons scattered around. There's a battering ram weapon. There's a machine gun. There's like a kind of a bolt, like a pulse laser, and then there's the heat-seeking missile, and there's this energy wave, right? And then you just battle, and you set how much you want to battle. You can set how much fog there is, some atmospheric stuff, and then you go after your opponent, and it keeps track, and whoever gets the score that you've determined wins the game. And you can play multiple rounds. And Luke and I would just sit back and play this for hours. It's his favorite game. He's a stud at it. He's an assassin. I had a party one time. We had 4 people playing this. It was all his little buddies, and he was gleeful as he murdered everyone over and over. Adults, children, it didn't matter. He's an ace at this game, and he drives me nuts. And he's also and if you know anything about battle mode, get the Heat Seeker, and you're pretty much you're in good shape, unless you know what to do, to stop it. And we've played it so much we know a lot of what to do. But battle mode is probably. It's my favorite mode in the game. I like it more than racing. And the thing is, it's super simple. That's the thing that gets me about it,
Well, this game is one of the rare games that you can have fun by yourself. You can have fun with 2 people, and you can have fun with 4 people doing absolutely incredibly different things.
Yeah.
Well, even with the single player, something you didn't mention is you do have the races, and although learning the courses and all the shortcuts and stuff is a lot of fun. But in this version, well, arcade version as well, there are coins scattered across the levels, and there are gold and silver coins, 8 of each on each track and on each stunt course. And to get some of these coins, I mean, you have to figure out how to jump off of something that might be miles away, that you have to ride from rooftop to rooftop and just fall at just the right angle to get these coins. It's a whole game within itself.
Yeah. Again, this reminds me of Tony Hawk, which had a very similar system.
This definitely reminds me more of Tony Hawk.
And it's funny that a racing game would emulate Tony Hawk. It's kind of strange, but I mean,
it does a really good job.
When you go after these coins, when you're a race, you're not going to win the race.
Oh, no, you don't do it. You go into free roam. You can go into like a free play mode where it's just you, and you just drive around and do your own thing.
Now, when he says free race, it's not like Big Red Racing. I mean, you can't just go anywhere. I mean, there are limitations. It's invisible walls for the most part.
There are some invisible walls, but I mean, the track, it's very free. It's not like you go of a little ways off the track and you get teleported back. There are huge open areas you can go to and do your thing, and there are hidden areas. One in particular I recall is there's like a little rail. It's down a ramp, and then there's a little rail, and then there's just a slit in the wall. It's just wide enough for your car to go through if your car was sideways. So you have to go down the ramp, hit the guardrail, turn sideways, and just slide into the wall. And then there are coins back there to get.
I've never even seen that.
That's crazy. It's incredible, and each track has it. So there is replayability just to go around and get all these coins. It alone would not sell the game, but knowing that it's part of the package adds value to the package.
Yeah, that's what makes this game fun. If it was just the racing, it would be okay. And you couldn't sell the game just on the battle mode or just on stunt, but with all 3 included, I think it's a great title. The game also includes 20 musical tracks. They're pretty good. It's got all the tracks from the arcade plus a ton more. I think the arcade had 8 tracks. And so there's a lot of, and the music, of course, on Dreamcast it's top shelf.
It's pretty good, yeah.
When you're racing, stuff happens, stuff flies over. It's got all the additional things that Atari would put in the original, makes it fun, And so I always thought that was pretty cool. It has ads in it.
Yeah.
That's for Dickies and Slim Jim. Snap into a Slim Jim brother.
And by ads, he means
billboards. Yeah. Did you know, by the way, just to go into the ports of San Francisco Rush 2049, there was a Game Boy port of this. I had no idea. Have you ever played that one?
I have not played it, but I am aware of it.
This also came out on the N64.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the N64 just couldn't cut it. Like the Dreamcast.
It couldn't do the polygon count.
It couldn't get the job done. A lot of people.
But
it's okay.
That is where I've played it more than any other place.
A lot of
so it's not like it's bad.
Yeah, a lot of people compare this game to Hydro Thunder, and they do have similarities. So and they're both racing games. That's about where. And they're both
Hydro Thunder has kind of the multi-branching things as well, but
this is better.
This is so much better, and I like Hydro Thunder, but this is really a full package game.
Yeah, and you've also got, the actual racing. When you're actually racing, you've got your map on the side. You've got all your information there. So it also is. By the way, it's a solid racing title.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a solid race. It's a real solid racing title. So, I had a look on eBay on this bad boy. right now it's going for about $30, which that's about right.
I think that's a great deal for this game.
Just for fun, I looked up how much a Sega or a Rush 2049 game would go for.
Arcade?
Yeah, the arcade game.
About $8.
One just sold it's a 2-player model for $911.
Yeah.
I don't see this one that much. We see the Rush games all the time, but not 2049. That's one that people tend to hold on to.
It's very popular. It's a very large machine, which is why a lot of people don't want them.
Yeah.
And it does have technical issues that you have to overcome.
And also, just in case you're interested in if we've enticed you any, you can pick yourself a Dreamcast up all day for $60, and there are deals to be had. I've got a couple in there now. Now, here's a caveat and then a solution. The Dreamcast is a solid piece of kit except for the GD-ROM. The GD-ROM, it's just like any spinning disc-based system will go off on you, and they're not easy to replace. So, there is an item out there. In fact, I'll put a link down in when we do this on YouTube, and there of an attachment they've came up with that you take your GD-ROM completely out, and you put in a SD card solution or a USB solution, and it's not cheap, and it's going to set you back a couple $100, I think it is. But I've heard good things, and you can of course pile all your games on the one thing, so it's the usual shtick. But I love the Dreamcast. I was happy to get to play some this week. Of course, I played on and off all the time. So.
Oh yeah, well, and this is a game you can pick up and play and come back to later and play again, and come back later and play again. We do have reviews for the games we played.
Wait, do you remember who sent this in before?
And that would have been Graham.
Graham Vebke. That's what I thought. Good.
Let me touch. Graham actually played both these games and has something to say about them. For Typing of the Dead, he says removes the shooting controls from House of the Dead 2 and adds typing challenges, creating creating a new typing on rails genre. The challenge here is to type words and phrases quickly and accurately to shoot your enemies, possibly making this the ultimate typing tutor. Sorry, Mavis Beacon.
See, that's what I said. Here you go.
9 out of 10. Plus, I love the Dreamcast and the characters' backs. For Rush, he said, San Francisco Rush 2049, arcade-style racer in the San Francisco with a large number of tracks, all different scenes, routes, and shortcuts. This game plays a much exaggerated physics, which is very true, which we didn't quite mention. I'm glad he brought that up. And mastering huge jumps and tricks. The aggressive AI on the tracks themselves, making this, and it does have very aggressive. That is something, actually, to its detriment, in my opinion. The AI on San Francisco Rush 2049 is brutal.
Yeah.
Even when you turn it, well, if you turn it down, it's very beatable. But at normal and difficult levels, it's brutally hard.
Yeah, it doesn't mess around.
He says that this is a fun pick-up and play racer, 8 out of 10.
Right.
I would agree with both of those. And he brought up very good points that we should have brought up since, this is our thing. Whoa, it's wheel time already?
It's wheel time.
Holy moly.
It's wheel time. Now, Brent, tell the good folks what you put on the wheel this time around.
I don't remember. Oh, I added the Mattel Aquarius.
This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. All right, Brent, spin that sucker.
You got any once?
I'm open for business.
You know what? I'm in a Sega mood. Let's get some Saturn going. It's time, Saturn. You have been called.
Not Saturn. What do you got there, Brent?
That is mouse-only games. The new addition to the wheel because we didn't put Aquarius on because you wouldn't let me.
That's right. Wow, your memory's garbage. So next week we're going to be playing games that are entirely mouse controlled. Now, what are our rules going to be here for this?
It has to be mouse only. Okay. I think we should put one limitation on the mouse only games.
Okay, I'm listening.
No lemmings.
No Lemmings. We shut that out. That's okay because there's tons of different titles from Lemmings.
No
more Lemmings.
No lemming genre because that is obviously the go-to game. And no Lemmings.
Any console or computer though, right? That has a mouse.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good.
Anything that is a point and click driven mechanic.
All right.
Well, that's what we will consider a mouse.
Sounds like a plan. For those of you that sent in arcade ideas. We are now closing the entries. we're going to mull over this week, and next week we're going to make a decision. And we've got some good ones in there, Brenny. So thanks for submitting those. We do appreciate it. So join us next week for mouse only games.
Yes.
And until then, ooh la la.